Good morning. Europe was the center of the Western world during the height of the Renaissance era. Humanistic thought was the center of education, with people studying poetry, grammar, history, moral philosophy, and rhetoric. Humanists studied the ancient texts with a method of reasoning and empirical evidence, instead of the comparison of authors and works favored by medieval authors and scholars. Art was at its peak. Painters and sculptors like Da Vinci, Michelangelo, Raphael, Donatello, Titian, and Botticelli were contemporaries, and architects like Brunelleschi, Bramante, Sangallo, and Moderno were creating some of the most beautiful buildings in the world that stand to this day. Science was thriving. In the early Renaissance, the discovery of the New World challenged the classical worldview, as did the works of Ptolemy in geography and Galen in medicine. Research was found to not always match everyday observations. A suitable environment was created to question scientific doctrine. One important development was not any specific discovery, but it was the scientific method. It focused on empirical evidence, the importance of mathematics, and it discarded Aristotelian science. Early and influential proponents of these ideas included Copernicus, Galileo, and Francis Bacon. The new scientific method led to great contributions in the fields of astronomy, physics, biology, and anatomy. This was the surface, a surface beautifully decorated and stunningly enhanced. This era was not without its problems, and the foremost of those were theological. In order to pay for the expensive Basilica of St. Peter, the seat of the Holy See, Pope Leo X authorized the sale of indulgences. Indulgences were, as I understand it, golden tickets to heaven, a papal get-out-of-jail-free card. A wealthy individual could purchase a few of these indulgences, and their conscience could be clear, and they'd be assured of a place in heaven. Justo Gonzalez, writer of The Story of Christianity, Volume 2, Reformation to the Present Day, tells us that the man put in charge of this task in Germany was a Dominican friar by the name of Johann Tetzel, who had no scruples in selling his product, promising that the sinner would be cleaner than when coming out of baptism, or cleaner than Adam before the fall, and that the cross of the seller of the indulgences had as much power as the cross of Christ. He even promised the redemptions of souls departed, saying that as soon as the coffer rings, the soul from purgatory springs. This was a quick and dirty way for the church to raise the necessary funds to finance the construction project of the basilica, as well as an impressive tomb for Leo. Gonzalez continues, and I quote, "It was at that point that Luther nailed his 95 theses to the door of the castle church at Wittenberg. His theses, written in Latin, were not calculated to cause a great religious commotion, as he had hoped that they would be the case of his earlier theses. But these 95 theses, written in a deep sense of righteous indignation, were much more devastating than the earlier ones. While addressing fewer theological issues, they did evoke a positive response from those who resented the exploitation of Germany by foreign interests. Luther didn't just question the sale of indulgences, he called the Pope out for his audacity. He asked the Pope that if he could free souls from purgatory, then why not use that power to help the poor, who were being downtrodden even further by the folks who were purchasing said indulgences? You can see where this was going. Luther was eventually excommunicated for his efforts in the Reformation in 1520, and subsequently and rather reluctantly formed his own church, and worshiped, even marrying a nun and having a family of his own. Ultimately, whether or not he wanted to, Luther sparked the Protestant Reformation, and it was from this that splintered the hold the Catholic Church had on the Western world, and ushered in a new era where no longer the Pope was second to only the angels, and no longer did a man need a priest to act as an intermediary to God. The Bible was being printed now, and it could be in several languages, making it possible for everyone to read the good news. Mark Taylor writes in Act of God the intersection of Protestantism and print decisively contributed to the forming of the modern subject without which democracy and the free market would be impossible. By privatizing, deregulating, and decentralizing religion, Protestant revolution began the long process of transforming the socioeconomic structures and practices in ways that eventually created the conditions for the personal computer and the internet. These developments are inseparable from the economic changes that are also tied to Protestantism. In other words, taking away the central authority, the church, and moving it into the hands of the people, we would not have the society we have now. The shattering of one worldview made way for another, and in doing so, sowed the seeds for unprecedented growth and social evolution. Taylor continued, the transformation of the relationship to God from the public participation in the rituals of the church, universal to the privacy of the individual's personal relation to God, initiated the breakdown of social hierarchies, and by doing so hastened the emergence of free and responsible individuals. The interrelated processes of individualization and privatization led to economic, social, and political diversification, and correlatively to greater religious pluralism. In other words, if we didn't have the Reformation, then we would not have had the American Revolution. Then we would not have had the freedom that we enjoy today. We would still most likely be ruled by a monarch. I would even go so far as to question whether or not the technology we have would have advanced so quickly as would we even have had an industrial revolution? Those of you who know your history know the backlash that scientists like Galileo faced during the Renaissance when they questioned the authority of the church on scientific matters. He went against the official church position that the sun, moon, and planets rotated around the earth and stated using scientific reasoning and empirical evidence, proving that we were in a solar-centric system, that all the planets, including the earth, rotated around the sun. He was put under house arrest for his crimes. I would postulate that we would all still be Europeans because I don't think we would ever left Europe, since there was nothing to run from, specifically the religious persecution that our forefathers experienced. These are all surely things to ponder in another sermon. Bringing us back to Taylor, this is where we get to the title of my sermon today, God is Gold. Taylor draws allusions to the works of Andy Warhol and the televangelist preacher Billy Graham. Warhol took pop culture items and threw them onto silk screens, thus taking our consumerism and selling it back to us. He commodified art. Using the medium of television, Billy Graham launched a successful televangelism ministry where he regularly asked for contributions from his audience. He commodified religion. To me, this sounds like history repeating itself, almost a bastardization of what happened in the Renaissance. In 1971, and this follows soon after, Richard Nixon was under intense pressure to remove us from the gold standard, which placed all of our money on a fixed conversion rate linked to gold. All other circumstances were bound to the dollar. All other currencies were tied to ours. We didn't have adequate gold reserves to maintain this system, so then Secretary of the Treasury, John Connolly, gave up the gold standard, eventually allowing the dollar to float. Going off the gold standard was the economic equivalent to the death of God, Taylor says. Gold functioned in the economic system just as God functions in religious schemata. Gold is a sign constructed to deny its status as a sign and thereby ground the value of other monetary signs. By removing the currency from the gold standard, we opened our market and currency to speculative finance and virtualization. The dollar only has value because we give it value. Replace the word gold with God. Gold is a sign constructed to deny the status of that as a sign and thereby ground the value of other religious signs. Taking us back further, replace this idea with the church. The church was the gold standard. We took the gold standard away, thereby opening the teachings of the Bible to specularization and virtualization. God as a construct only had value because we gave it value. Therefore, God is gold. We Unitarian Universalists have a long history of doing just that. We constantly take ourselves off whatever new gold standard we've set. We evolve. We started with liberal Calvinism, which morphed into transcendentalism, and now Unitarian Universalism. We consider ourselves hyper-Protestant, a term coined by my professor Mike Hogue at Meadville. While we are comfortable with a gold standard for a while, we begin to eventually see its flaws, and we set out to change it. We have a central authority, but the power rests right here in our churches. We've embraced science, reasoning, technology, and social justice, which can be anathema to some other social religious groups. We are not without our flaws, however. One of the biggest challenges the Unitarian Universalist Reformation, if you will, was the fellowship movement, which allowed people of like mind to form a church society without a minister. This comes directly from the Unitarian Universalist Association website. The Positive View maintains that the congregations planted as lay-led fellowships between 1948 and 1967 saved Unitarianism from near extinction and converted a regional religious movement to a truly national one. Along with growing the denomination, fellowship brought innovation, vitality, and lay leadership into a religious community greatly in need of fresh air. At the other end of the spectrum is the view that the fellowship movement spawned small, introverted, even hostile groups that did not want to grow or welcome newcomers, did not identify with the larger denomination, and represented Unitarian Universalism in a way that did not reflect the larger movement's self-understanding. Last year, while I was training a young man at Disneyland in the costuming department, we discussed religion during our lunch break, which is something I normally don't do, but he was fascinated by the idea of a church being so accepted of an LGBT individual like myself, and by the fact that I was becoming a minister in this rich tradition. He told me the only information he'd ever gotten about Unitarian Universalism was a dismissive comment made by a professor in his class on religion at his college, which, I paraphrase this, Unitarian Universalism isn't a religion, it's a social group that masquerades as a church. They aren't even worth talking about, so I won't. An anecdote that I heard during the class at Meadville as well was involving Rosemary Bray McNabb, the current president of Starr King School of Ministry. She was interviewed by Coretta Scott King to be the ghostwriter or co-writer, the professor wasn't sure, of her upcoming biography. She said something to the effect of this: "Oh, Martin Luther King Jr. and I loved Unitarian Universalism, and we considered becoming UUs, but you wouldn't let us bring Jesus." To counterpoint, during a recent conversation with a fellow student, she mentioned that she felt that humanists were under attack while we were at school. She felt that she was being forced to accept this new idea that God was a thing now and we just had to accept it. Not being a secular humanist myself, I didn't see it, but that was also because I wasn't looking for it, nor was I really involved in those conversations. But I can empathize, being a pagan, within a larger denomination, it sometimes looks at me with a certain appraisal. She felt that old guard humanists found a way to be religious without the trappings of religion, found a way to be spiritual without sacrificing their personal beliefs. I then understood where she was coming from. If her spirituality wasn't broke, why fix it? So now I wonder if this is our new gold standard, or our new Reformation, finding a way to truly balance the secular with the spiritual, the deist/theist with the secular/humanist atheist, and Darwinist. Taylor says that this is linked to economics. He mentions that the nation state has waned and the market state has waxed, explaining our current situation with the 1%. Although I think the pendulum is hopefully meeting some resistance on this. So I guess then my question would be, can we first define Unitarian Universalism in a way that forces people to see us as a faith rather than a social group? And secondly, can we make room for everyone at the table without sacrificing our personal and very deeply held beliefs? Have we become so entrenched in our structure and our beliefs that we can't force the pendulum to maybe stop swinging just a little bit to find that counterbalance? When I was at school, there was a lot of talk about a shared language of reverence. There was discussion on whether or not we even had rituals, or whether or not they were even too homogenized or watered down. I know that there were times where I felt frustrated listening to the sheer numbers of people who were losing. We were losing as a faith because we were either A, too loose for them or too individualistic, or B, we're not inclusive to their beliefs, and often we feel inclined to tell them what's wrong with their beliefs. We're losing our Christians to other liberal churches, and we're losing the ear of our atheists as well. I like my deities to be imperfect with human foibles, which is why I prefer the Hellenistic pantheon. But I also love the idea expressed by Mary Daly, who wrote, "It is the creative potential itself in human beings that is the image of God. Why indeed must God be a noun? Why not a verb, the most active and dynamic of all? Hasn't the naming of God as a noun been an act of murdering this dynamic verb? And isn't the verb infinitely more personal than a mere static noun?" Doesn't this speak to us as Unitarian Universalists? It's been said many times that we as UUs show up. If God is gold, then they only have the worth that we assign to it, she, they, them. Then why can't this be anything we choose, even not God? My deepest hope is that we can find that counterbalance. A song that brought me to tears during the Forest Church Learning Convocation at Meadville Lombard in January 2016 was called "I Need You to Survive." We need one another to survive because our faith demands it. While we do not have to believe in our previous Christian theology, we must acknowledge that we started with a non-Trinitarian, that is the word that we use when we don't believe in the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. We don't believe in that doctrine anymore. We have Christian members and pagan members. We have a rich humanist tradition, and we welcome atheists, naturalists, and Darwinists. I need you to survive because you all teach me to be a better human and a Unitarian Universalist. I need you to survive because I believe in you and the work that you are capable of. We need to be more inclusive, and especially, we just need to be more. This is our Reformation. We need to embrace it. We don't evangelize and share our good news. UUism is our currency. And since we removed our gold standard a long time ago, we must show folks what our faith and our religion is worth. Is God gold? If our table is set and there is room and we are welcoming, does it all really matter? Thank you. And blessed.